Right. Welcome to a very special edition of the Weekly Objective. So special that I think this is maybe the second time in history that we've done this, at least on YouTube. It used to be a Clubhouse show. And I think the topic and the content will be surprising maybe to some. I think this is, by the way, Nikos, one of those episodes. I am being joined by Nikos Sotirakopoulos, by the way. I should mention that. And this is one of those episodes where we should remind people at the beginning that what we're saying here is not objectivism. It is us, to the best of our understanding, applying objectivism to a particular issue. And of course, I think this time we need an extra disclaimer that the people we are speaking in moral defense of, the new British Prime Minister, Liz Truss, and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng, are certainly not objectivists. And I think that might raise the question among objectivists, why did we title it In Moral Defense of Liz Truss? Why is it so, why is it not some sort of a mixture, Liz Truss, the good, the bad, and the chaotic, as we once did about Jordan Peterson?
And also, I'm not even convinced I'm going to give my moral support. So I'm looking forward to listening to your argument because I'm still on the fence on that.
Yes, well, this was my title, and I also asked Nikos to join me on this special episode. I'm gonna sort of lay it out broadly. I think what we're seeing now is, let's say, if we were to have somebody who is on board with objectivism become suddenly prime minister of this country or any Western country, the policies they would have would not be that far off from what we're seeing now. I mean, there's obviously the bad policies that we wouldn't see, specifically the cap on energy prices, the energy giveaway, and the £400 handout. But all things considered, and I'll explain why, I think this is not just as good as we could hope for, it's far better than we should hope for within the context of today's politics, which is also why I think they are doomed to fail. And unfortunately, we're not going to see, I don't know if we're going to see any of these policies implemented. I'm almost certain we're not going to see this government last very long. But yes, I will elaborate on that. But
this is very interesting, by the way, Razi, because we've grown up, my generation, we're in the same generation, with all this narrative that says that we live in a neoliberal hegemony, supposedly, where the only game in town is supposedly unrestricted free market capitalism, and the policies that would be attacked by the wolves of the markets, or whatever was the language of the left, would be leftist policies. Whereas what we're seeing these days, we see for the first time in a generation, one government actually trying to implement something that looks like free market policies, which means tax cuts, doing away with some ridiculously useless regulation, as for example, the cap on the bonuses of the banks. Notice, these are bonuses that an institution decides to give its own board or CEO or whatever. So the state shouldn't have anything to do with this anyway. So we're talking about this type of policies. And there is reaction not only from the left, there is also reaction from key institutions, such as, for example, the International Monetary Fund. And there is also reaction by magazines as, for example, The Economist. And there are also reactions from within the Conservative Party. So before we even evaluate these policies, let's make sure what we're seeing here. We are seeing in real life, concretize something that we have been saying for a long time, which is that capitalism has been losing very, very, very badly on the level of ideas. And because it has been losing on the level of ideas, it will never be able to win purely on economics levels. We've been saying this to our friends in free market think tanks. We told them, look, your graphs and all these things are important. This is not how we're going to win. We have to go on the offense on the issue of morality. Because what do the critics of this measure say? Oh, it's not fair that at this difficult moment, the rich should not pay even more money. This is not a political argument. Sorry, this is not an economic argument. This is an argument that does not make sense in terms of economics. It makes sense only if you have accepted this morality that says that if you have more, you should be punished and you should suffer. So before we even enter this discussion, let's pat ourselves on the back and tell to everyone who cares about freedom or free markets, we told you so.
Yes, and we're going to talk about this. This is basically the reason why I think they're going to fail, is that because the culture is not ready, because philosophically the culture is more ready for a Jeremy Corbyn than a Liz Truss and a Kwasi Kwarteng. And by the way, a part of what we're seeing with this reaction, I mean, there's a lot to say about this reaction to these policies. One is that newspapers, even the Standard, the Evening Standard, which is not some left-wing newspaper, reports it as tax cuts for the rich. There are tax cuts for the highest-paying, earners, and they've lifted, as you mentioned, the cap on bankers' bonuses. But also the income tax, the lowest income tax level, has been cut. An increase in national insurance, which is like the British equivalent of Social Security, has been canceled. There's all sorts of alcohol levy that's been canceled. Stamp duty on people who buy a home, that's been lowered. So there's tax cuts for everybody, but this is not reported. It's reported as tax cuts for the rich. Also, the way the reaction is reported. So, for example, the pound crashing to its lowest level in 50 years or however long it was reported as a reaction to tax cuts. Now, there's a bunch of different things that happened, including the Bank of England raising the interest rate by less than some expected or thought it should be raised, which is where currency is usually affected. There's the fact that there's spending that's not being cut alongside with the tax cuts. So there's many reasons, and of course there's the market correction on the pound. So the pound has bounced back. It had after the crash what was its best week in over 2 years, and that's not in the news. So yes, this is this reaction shows something about how the culture reacts to something like this. Now, I have to say one more thing, which is when we say, and I know people are criticizing me. Somebody in the regular chat said, "Good luck defending this bucket of moral inconsistency." Well, so look at the reaction to a little bit of tax cuts and a bunch of spending. And try to imagine what would have happened if they said, we're also going to cut the NHS budget, we're going to cut the education budget. And by the way, they did say among the many good policies they announced, they said they will make it a little bit more difficult to get job seekers allowance, I think it was. There's I think they said they'll make it a little bit more difficult for unions to strike, which is a very important thing, I think. And again, the little that they're doing is getting a reaction that could end up in Liz Truss being one of the shortest reigning leaders of any country in our lifetime.
Let us concretize what we mean when we say that the culture is not ready for this. So political analyst and university professor Matt Goodwin had an interesting tweet. He says, "I cannot stress enough how unpopular slashing taxes and cutting spending on public services is. It is an utterly toxic combination. Here is the latest British social attitude survey. It's a 6% position. 6. So only 6% of the population agrees with a policy of, at the same time, cutting spending on public services and cutting taxes. 6%. I'm sure that Corbyn's craziest policy would have at least double-digit support. Not his craziest policies would have double-digit support. So this shows where we are. We're not in a quote neoliberal hegemony, we are in the point where even a sane economic policy, because when you've spent hundreds of billions with a B, hundreds of billions of dollars for COVID measures, for energy subsidies, for throwing money in the NHS and in the insurance system, which will always require more and more and more money. So when after all this you say, okay, let's cut taxes a bit so we might not punish productive people, and also let's make sure that we start cutting from somewhere because of our deficit, this economically sane position is met with disdain. And this tells you what you want to know. This graph, this 6% only approval in these policies should tell to conservatives that you have lost. You have lost the battle of ideas. And actually, let me take it a step further. You've lost the battle of ideas because you never fought it. You always gave the moral high ground to the left. You talked about our NHS. You talked about our duty to support those who need our support in any way you would see fit without asking us. And now what you have is reality coming to you and say, okay, now it's time to help those in need. And instead of that, you cut from the rich. Therefore, you are wrong. So based on your own standards that you have accepted, dear conservatives, you deserve everything that is coming on your way, which is a pity because, as Razi says, these policies are sane and these policies are, I would also say, just.
So I think I'm going to get to that in a moment. I think you're being generous to the Tories. But before that, I want to say, I don't know if you're able to share that graph, because you sent it to me earlier and I looked at it and it starts from, I think it was 83, and the highest it ever was 10% support for that. So yes, and this is another reason why I think I was right with the title I picked for this episode, because do you know what it is for a politician, especially one who is at the highest position of a politician in a country, to go with a policy that has 6% support? Now, it's not fully there because they're not cutting spending yet, but they did say that is coming. So, I mean, this is really, as I mentioned before, I think this is a major moment in hopefully something that will have some sort of impact down the line. Because again, I don't think it's gonna stick, and the reason I don't think it's gonna stick is the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party is, you say they lost the battle of ideas. I don't think they were ever, they don't have clear ideas. So there was nothing to win. They were not participating in it. And if you look at recent governments, in the past 25 years, the freest economically government that we had was Tony Blair's government, in that taxes were lower. Taxes were at the highest rate of income tax was where the Conservatives are now trying to, or Kwasi Kwarteng is now trying to bring it back to. There was less regulation. We got all sorts of things from 12 years of Conservatives, like the ban on plastic straws and all sorts of war on plastic. This thing that, for our American audience, you may not know this, a can of Coke in the UK costs more than a can of Diet Coke or Coke Zero, because the Conservatives think they're making us healthier by adding a tax on sugary drinks. And there's a lot more.
You mentioned the plastic straw ban. Now, as a Greek who drinks frappe and freddo espresso, this is painful. But who introduced this in the UK? Michael Gove. Michael Gove is supposedly this free marketeer firebrand. So you have a guy who is, again, he's sanctioned by free market and freedom think tanks as our guy. This is the guy who adopted the policy that 10 years ago would be considered a crazy green policy, that only some radical environmentalists would want such a policy, and a policy which is absolutely useless. Try to find what's the percentage of plastic in the oceans coming from your plastic straws. It's some lines of 0.000000, some lines, and then 1%, 0.0001%. Anyway, so these are the people who are the Tory party. These are the people who now have to fight the battle against everyone from the IMF to the economists to the media. And of course, they are not fit for the battle.
Yeah,
We are
and by
fit
the
for
way,
the battle, but we are somewhere in the rear, and it's going to be some time till we get called, which is a pity because we are the only ones who are able to fight this battle.
and Michael Gove, it was reported today, or I think he may have indicated this in an interview, he might vote against this government. And this is a thing with the conservative. With this,
is it true?
Yeah, he might vote against the cut of the top rate of income tax. So this is the thing with the conservative party in the UK. I mean, as far as I understand human nature, even conservatives in the UK have free will, but it does seem, they are consistent about this. A few years ago, I lived in a building that had a cockroach infestation. And so this guy comes and, the guy who deals with cockroaches goes apartment to apartment to put this thing. I was assuming there's going to be some spray. I'm going to have to go live in a hotel for a week or something. And he put these little pieces of cardboard that he folded into triangles, and he put this little brown paste on them, a little bit of it. And I asked, what is that? And he said, the cockroaches eat this, and then it makes them eat each other. Now, I don't know if this is served in Conservative Party conferences, but it is consistently how the Conservative Party behaves. I mean, for better or worse, some of their leaders, this is their fourth leader, the fourth Conservative prime minister in 12 years of them being in power. And remember, this is a party who got rid of Margaret Thatcher. She didn't lose an election, a general election. It was the Conservative Party that got rid of her. So yes, and again, and by the way, most of the members of Parliament of the Conservative Party at the moment voted for Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor, whose policies were very different, over Liz Truss. But luckily for the rest of us, the final vote between the two of them went to the general Conservative Party members.
One more question while I try to process what exactly this guy did in your apartment to get rid of the cockroaches. But anyway, so all these people who hate on Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, what would be their solution? So what would be their policy mix? Again, we're talking about a country who has spent 100, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but something like 300 billions combined in the last years in terms of throwing helicopter money, in terms of COVID release, in terms of, and we're not talking about in terms of like in the hospitals, which I could understand. I mean, stuff in terms of the lockdowns, or then helping businesses that, quote, helping that they forced to close, and also the energy cap. So when we're talking about these billions and billions and billions being thrown, what would be their solution? Perpetual borrowing from whom? Would it be printing money, in which case inflation would become way, way, way worse? What exactly is their solution?
Well,
or do they envision becoming Greece?
I can tell you one solution that Rishi had that Kwasi Kwarteng canceled was the raising the corporation tax from 19% to 25%, which is insane. It's a massive leap. It's like this guy was walking through the high streets of towns in the UK, said, there's too many businesses here that are still open that I didn't shut down with my lockdowns, and I'm going to tax them out of existence. It's an absolutely terrible policy. And again, it's a policy that's politically much easier to get away with. I guarantee you, if he was prime minister now at the Conservative Party conference that started today, he would not have people, members of parliament of his own party, talking to the media about how they're going to defeat his first plan as prime minister.
Okay, so if I understand well, then Razi, then your moral defense, let's say, of Truss and Kwarteng is that they're doing something which at the moment sets them against their own party and against public opinion. So you consider this a virtuous endeavor because they have to do something which is difficult and they have to stick to it, which sounds a bit like the the definition of doing something heroic. Do I get this right?
Yes, I mean, look, you can go against your party and against public opinion and do things that are bad. I mean, Donald Trump, I think, went against his own party and against the public, and he was definitely wrong on almost everything, but and just wrong in every fiber of his being. But here again, like I made a list, so we've spoken about the bad parts of this plan, and certainly, if we're coming at it from an objectivist perspective, the way they are defending their own plan is not, the wording of it is not similar to what an objectivist would use. But the list of positive things. So cutting, this is only part of it. This is a small part of it. Cutting income tax for the highest and lowest and everybody, basically. Cutting the increase in, or canceling the increase in corporation tax. Cutting stamp duty. National insurance increase canceled. The cap on bankers' bonuses canceled. Other stuff outside of economic related policies. Legalizing fracking. That's hugely unpopular and very, very necessary. There's talk. I don't know if this is an official policy in any way, but there is talk about sort of opening up the borders a little bit, not as much as we'd like to see, but that is certainly not a popular opinion among conservatives. So she is doing, I guess, what she thinks is right, and I happen to agree on most things, but she is going against her own party and certainly against the opposition. It's not like going against her party, but she has support somewhere. She doesn't. She has support on the daily objective and on the weekly objective, and that's pretty much it. So yes,
so what I'm thinking about, and now I'm starting to sympathize with your zeal and your fervor in defending her. I was watching some documentaries about the Thatcher years of the 1980s, and I was thinking, how would it be like if we had such struggles, such battles of ideas today? And looks like that this is something in a different context. What we're having today, we're having a moment that will be remembered. And the difference is that back then Thatcher had with her the Sun, which, I mean, it's not a great ally to have, but it was the #1 selling newspaper. So Thatcher had the movement behind it. It had an ideological mechanism, let's say, not mechanism in terms of a conspiracy, but many people, many intellectuals supporting her. There were other similar governments elsewhere, for example, Reagan with all his problems, whereas now it's way more difficult because you don't have, you could say it's easier because you don't have the opponent that was back then, which was organized labor and the unions. But today, even those who were supposed to be on your side have completely given up on any notion that a country can prosper through more freedom, through more individual responsibility. Actually, individual responsibility was a dirty word during the lockdown. So maybe this is, maybe we are through a window in history, which is this thing where things actually can happen. And maybe we haven't realized it. Maybe Razi has realized it, but
maybe. But again, I don't think it's gonna. I really hope I'm wrong, but I don't think it's gonna be successful. And this is also why I'm encouraging our friends around the world to pay attention to what's going on in the UK. Because if you think, and I know some very good people who think, yes, we need to change the culture, but it's it's too late, and we need to start with politics, and we need to find allies wherever we have, and are happy to ally themselves with not good people, not people with good policies. Pay attention here and see how important it is to have a culture that's ready for such policies, because we don't have that, and unfortunately, I think this means it's not going to succeed. And again, I really, really hope I'm wrong. We have a new member, Vegard, welcome. And we have one super chat from Kathleen. Kathleen says, I currently fully support Truss and Kwarteng, especially in light of recent circumstances. I haven't seen them give any formal speeches. Grapevine says they're sticking with it, like that about them. Well, yes, I agree with that. I have seen some speeches, and I'm very impressed. By the way, Nikos, I should say there are here and there some people in the media who are pretty good on this. I think Alistair Heath in the Telegraph is. I've been a fan for a long time, and his recent columns are very very good. And it's
Well,
mostly him.
I'm in warm Greece, so I'm not following. I've seen that the usual suspects like Mark Littlewood has been supportive, but when it comes to the general public, the gap in the opinion polls between Labour and the Tories, with Labour on top, is 30%. The other day was 30%. I think this is a historical peak, and again, this shows how lost conservatives are in the battle of ideas. So they have two options in front of them. The one is to continue as they've done all these years, which is basically being the Labour Party with cooler suits and cooler ties and leading the country to becoming the Greece of the North, as it was before Thatcher. And the other solution is that maybe now they realize that they need to start fighting the battle of ideas, and they need to realize what is the fountainhead, what is the basis, what is at the root of the policies that would promote freedom. And at the root is not economics. At the root is a morality that says your life is yours, and that the existential need that you have is to be free to produce, free to think, free to put your thoughts into action, and not having other people saying, oh, you've achieved this, now I deserve 10%, 20%, 40%, or 90% of it. Because once you say that parts of what I produce, of what I am in a way, belongs to someone else, the only difference is it going to be 2% or 88%? But sometimes it doesn't matter. No, it never matters. The percentage never matters. What matters is that you have given up your right to your life.
So Ryan sends a super chat, says, the best that can come out of Truss's efforts will be a good case study for future argument in favor of cultural change. How do we leverage it the best?
By having the first weekly objective in 2 years, and Razi persuading me to give up my Sunday evening to defend Liz Truss. But I think it is worth it, because again, we're living in a moment of time which we're gonna see in retrospect was quite important.
By the way, in the regular chat, Christopher Smith asks, what is the weekly objective? We used to have a show on Clubhouse, which was called The Weekly Objective, which was every Sunday at 6 p.m. UK time, usually hosted by Jonathan Hoenig. Often he would sing a song at the beginning, so you really missed out. But yes, we thought we would bring it back. I don't know if it's one time only, but it's not planned as a weekly show yet. But yeah, I thought this was important enough. We will, by the way, be covering this a lot in the coming week. It will be the topic of 3 episodes of the Daily Objective, and yeah, we are gonna stay on it. And I have to say, there is if the Conservatives don't turn on Liz Truss for this, there is about 1.5 years until the next general election in the UK. So, and by the way, inflation was coming regardless of who's prime minister, and you know, the bad economic results of lockdowns and of Russia's war is something we were going to see anyway. But people vote often because of the economic situation, and let's just say it really needs to, things really need to change quickly in terms of the results people see for Liz Truss to have any chance in 2024. I don't think it's going to happen. We're going to do our best to make it happen. But yeah, let's see.
And 2 more announcements. One is that, speaking about the UK, 2 weekends from today, so not this Friday that is going to be in 5 days, Friday after, we have the Battle of Ideas in London. So I'm going to travel in the UK. On Friday, we have an event, Ayn Rand Center UK event. Saturday and Sunday, we have the Battle of Ideas with 4 objective speakers. I think it's the first time. Okay, no, second. Yeah, first time we have 4 speakers.
Yeah.
Myself, the gentleman on the who is running Ayn Rand Center UK, Yaron Brook, and John Walkin. So 4 people in the Battle of Ideas. Register. I think there's a discount code or something for members. Am I right, Razi?
Yes, Daniel, I don't know if you have it handy enough that you can post it now, but if not, we will be talking about this on Thursday. That's going to be the whole episode. And we're going to have Baroness Claire Fox on that
Baroness Claire Fox, yeah. And the other announcements, way more counterclimactic, is that now, as a good millennial, I have a TikTok channel, so I encourage you to follow me there. And also, Ayn Rand Center has a TikTok channel, so we're also on TikTok.
Yes, and by the way, tomorrow this is going to be a politically heavy week on our channel. Tomorrow we will be talking about the presidential elections in Brazil. If you want another example of why this is unique, what's going on in the UK right now, take a closer look, not too close because it's going to be uncomfortable. Closer look at the 2 candidates in Brazil, and yeah, we're going to have some Brazilian objectivists on the show tomorrow to explain the situation to us, and yeah.
Okay, so this was it with our special Sunday episode. Special moments in history call for special episodes. Razi, I'll leave the last word for you. Just say a big thank you to our friends who have joined us. Also, one last thing. I've been going through past episodes to find clips for my TikTok. It's so inspiring to see the numbers. In some way, we are 10x on where we were 2 summers ago. So we're nowhere near where we'd want to be. But a huge thank to those of you who have given us this 10x boost. With another 10x boost, we're gonna be way, way more prominent, and this is how you change the world, through ideas. Remember, the Bolsheviks started the first Bolshevik meetup. There were 11 people.
Well, yeah, and actually, if you look at the past couple of weeks, the daily objective, including podcast downloads, has averaged more than 1,000 a week. I think we'll have to 10x it a few times from now until April 2024 in order to have the kind of impact we want on the elections. But again, we know that's not how it works. We do need a cultural change that will take longer. And yeah, we will do our best to help make that happen.
Excellent. So
thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks to the super chatters and to our members, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Bye.